I'm going to go ahead and introduce our very first speaker, who is fantastic, coming here all the way from London. I'm going to say her little bio, then we're going to do a jingle, and she's going to come up here full of energy. Her name is Phoebe Tickell. Phoebe describes herself as an imagination activist, a new kind of activist that works with imagination to create better actions for the planet and the future. She is the founder of Moral Imaginations, an organization catalyzing imagination activists through research, thought leadership, and movement building. She has a background as a biological natural scientist, technologist, and social entrepreneur. Phoebe is recognized as a leading systems thinker, and she lectures and speaks globally, sharing her unique perspective on complex challenges. Please welcome to the stage, Phoebe Tickell.
It is wonderful to be here with you. I'm just taking in for a moment the feeling that I'm standing in the middle of 35,000 people that really care about the future, that really care about the planet, that really care about making change. My name is Phoebe Tickell, and I call myself an imagination activist. And my talk today is called How to Be an Imagination Activist. I'm going to be talking to you about what that means, why imagination is so crucial at this time, and how that inner growth, expanding our imaginations, can lead to far more ambitious change. But to start with, I wanted to start by giving you a gift. You see, I come from a future where all your friends and family live fulfilling lives, where all children have the right to education, to health, to play safely in the streets. I want to show you this door, this portal. Hopefully you can all see it. This is a door, this is a tool that as an imagination activist I use every day. And as you look at this door, as you look at this tool, it's interacting with your neurons, and it is an actual real-life portal to the future that you dream of, that you imagine. So look through that door. What is that future for you? I want you to breathe it in. I want you to really take a deep breath, breathe it in, feel that future. The future I come from is a future beyond capital. It's a future beyond ownership. It's a future beyond competition, beyond danger to safety and lack of health and inequality. But it's not beyond imagination. The role of an imagination activist is to build the longing for this kind of future. It's to build the sensation that this is possible, that it's real. The role of a normal activist is to try and get people to take moral action. The role of an imagination activist is to remind you what it is that you're fighting for, what it is that you believe in, what is it that is driving you to make the changes, to do the work you do every day. Now, one of the imagination activists that inspire me the most from the past is MLK, Martin Luther King. But he didn't sell some dream of the future. He didn't sell some fantasy. And actually, Glennon Doyle says, perhaps the role of imagination is not to escape reality, but to remember it. What MLK did, the civil rights movement, was to unsettle the present. It wasn't to sell a future, it was to unsettle the present. He highlighted that the world that America had promised, where every person has rights, a world of freedom, of equal chances in life, he highlighted that this was a promise that was not being fulfilled. And he used extremely powerful language and metaphors and storytelling. He would talk about how African Americans of the US were given a check, a bad check, that they were going to the bank and they couldn't cash that check. but he said this bank of justice is not bankrupt. And he made people believe, realize that this was unfair, unjust, and it was not promising the world and the reality that actually our highest morals, our highest values had promised. Same for the suffragettes. All social change starts in imagination. And all of these changes seemed impossible before they happened. Every single massive social change seemed completely impossible. Black people having rights in America, women having the vote, the Berlin Wall coming down. Even the smoking ban in the UK seemed completely absurd before it happened. Can you imagine today smoking still being legal in pubs and workplaces and even schoolrooms, and there being talk about how the fight against smoking continues, we're trying our best, but smoking continues? No. When we decide, when we realize that there is a discrepancy beyond the present that we're living and the kind of world we want to live in, we take action. This is the role of imagination. This is why it's so important. And this is why we need to stoke it together as activists. This is a famous image, 1969, Neil Armstrong, man on the moon. It was 1962 when JFK said, "We choose to go to the moon, and we will get to the moon by the end of this decade." It took them 7 years. 7 years to go from saying, "We choose to go to the moon," to getting that done. Now, I want you to just imagine, use your imagination, to think, what if we heard politicians saying, "We choose to ban homelessness. We choose to eradicate food waste. We choose to solve child poverty." Could we achieve that in 7 years? Can we gather the momentum? Can we gather the imagination that that is possible and see a world where that is the case? Now, I think that going to the moon is great, it was impressive, but I actually think these issues that we're facing, where people do not have enough to eat, do not have somewhere to sleep, are fearing for their lives, the situation in Gaza right now, it is heavy on all of our consciousnesses. So can we start to bring about a culture where we use our imagination to help people envision these futures where these things are impossible? So we put a man on the moon, we say it was in 7 years, but in actual fact, we'd gone to the moon hundreds of times, in stories, in the news, in cartoons. In 1865, there was a book called From the Earth to the Moon, full of beautiful illustrations, bringing that vision of what would it be like if we went to the moon. And that's what we need to do right now as activists, as climate activists, as social activists. We need to be telling stories so irresistible about these kinds of futures, about what would happen if we did ban these things, if we did manage to do these things. And it's through that storytelling, it's through that imagination that we will move from imagination to action. I love this quote by Don DeLillo, who says in his book Underworld, "Longing on a large scale is what makes history. Longing on a large scale is what makes history." As imagination activists, we need to build that longing for a different future. And we need to remind ourselves that it is possible. Ursula K. Le Guin, a fantastic sci-fi author, recently passed away, an absolute heroine of mine, says, "Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings." And that resistance and change starts in art, and often in the art of words, of storytelling. We need to be telling those stories all the time. That's how we're going to get there. Why do we need to do this? I don't need to talk to a room full of people that care about change, about the current dire situation, but some of the things that are playing on my mind. July this year was the hottest day on record. That means it was the hottest day for 120,000 years. We're set to break the Paris Agreement by the end of the decade. Global warming is predicted to reach 2 degrees by the end of this decade, which will mean 1 billion deaths. 3 degrees of warming means 40% biodiversity loss. I just want to let that sink in. It is said that we can account 1,000 tons of carbon to equate one future human life. So we have the facts, we have the science. The problem is not one of science, it's a problem of imagination and of will. The last one that I want to say is this piece of news about plastic really hit home for me. So it's predicted that in the next 10 years we'll be increasing, a 40% increase in plastic waste. And it's predicted that by 2050 there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean. We have the facts. We don't have resource problems. We have imagination problems. This is one of the mantras that I hold really, really close, and one of the mantras of being an imagination activist. We think that the problems we have are technological. We think that we need more facts. We need more, it's a lack of resources or a lack of knowledge or intelligence. I promise you that if we closed the doors on this stage and we said nobody here is going home until we fix these problems, I promise you we would fix them. We have all the intelligence, we have all the talent and all the ideas we need. And I came to realize this when I was a scientist. I started life as a scientist, as a technologist, working in biotechnology. I was passionate about changing the world. I was a climate activist in my spare time, and in my job, I was a scientist, clearly didn't have a lot of hobbies, and needed to have a bit more of a life. But you can see me there on the left. I started life as a scientist, and in a way, I went through my own kind of reimagination of who I am, and what my work is all about. You know, my original path was all laid out for me. I would be a scientist, I would have a lab, become a professor, publish some good papers in some good journals, probably get married, move to a suburb in London, have 2 dogs. It was all kind of planned out. And I reimagined everything. I do not live in a suburb in London. I don't have 2 dogs, nor am I married. And I'm now an imagination activist, and I travel the world, and I try and stoke people's imagination and their passion and their longing to change the world, because we do not need any more technological innovations. I realized at that time that actually the problems that we face are far more upstream than technology. And actually, even the innovation pipeline that technology enters when you create a new discovery or a new technology is actually broken from the start, with investors, with trying to create returns on investment, and suddenly what you've created has been funneled into serving a capitalist system that ultimately needs to change. So in 2020, I started this organization called Moral Imaginations. And as you can see, there's a man there. It's about pumping imagination iron. We believe that imagination is a muscle. And so far what we've seen is indeed it is. The more you practice imagination, the more you expand your vision of what the world could be like, the more you build that inner will that the world can and must be different, the more that muscle strengthens. And so to date, we've worked with about 1,000 people, 30 organizations, and this movement is building. More and more people are getting in touch saying, you've finally given a name for the thing that I feel I am. I'm an imagination activist. You've helped me realize who I am and what my role is and what kind of work I want to do in the world. And I invite you all to call yourselves imagination activists too. But no imagination washing. If you're going to call yourself that, you need to be committed to expanding the imagination of the people around you, of building that ambition. We're called moral imaginations. We also believe in moral ambition, moral innovation, that we can harness the talents of human beings, of collective action to create a world that is good for all. And we have been on quite a journey in the last 4 years. On the screen you can see a picture of our report of some work we did with a municipality in the centre of London called Camden Council. And we decided to work with Camden Council, with a local council, as our first organisation, because we believe in imagination justice. We think that there is already a lot of imagination capital being hoarded by the private sector. And actually what we need is more imagination capital, more time, more space, more permission, and more practice in the not-for-profit sector, in the civil society sector. I want to see local governments be the beacons of imagination in the future, supporting citizens to imagine what kind of neighborhoods and worlds they want to live in, and helping them take the actions and raise the funds and organize to put that into reality, to make that real. And so we worked with Camden. So in 2022, Camden Council became the first local council to run an imagination activist training. Can I get a little cheer? Woo! Thank you. I say that because they will not be the last. We're working with more and more local councils now, and my dream is that in 10 years, imagination activist training will be absolutely essential and mandatory in all local councils and in central government. We need to be feeding our imaginations. We cannot settle for piecemeal, plaster-sticking solutions right now. We have to stay ambitious, we have to stay excited, and we have to stay energized and with our eyes on the future. The training took place over 8 weeks. And it was a cohort of 30 council officers who met each week, going through all sorts of exercises, practices, visioning the future, connecting with nature, bringing the voice of future generations and bringing the voice of nature into their decision-making. So it was a very exciting and kind of fast-paced course that led them to be these ambassadors of imagination for the organization. The other project I want to talk to you about that Moral Imaginations has run is a course called Tools for Regenerative Renaissance. And what we did, again, was 500 people went on this journey over 8 weeks, where we connected them with alternatives that are happening right now in their neighborhoods. And so that's something else I want to highlight. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed, as William Gibson said. We've already got the solutions. We don't need more like thinking and engineering. They're already there. And actually, as you can see, some of those solutions, we've got community-supported agriculture, cooperatives, community microgrids, ethical banks. So the course connected people to those alternatives and brought them together in community to make that reality, to make that future real today. So 3 things that, as an imagination activist, you can cultivate. You can help people feel different futures. Bring that alive with stories, immersive environments, show, don't tell, give people a real lived sense of what those futures are. 2 is act like the future is here already, and I'll show you a quick example of that. 3 is challenge paradigms and worldviews. Clearly, the current paradigm and worldview is not working. The promise of communism and socialism also failed. The dream of capitalism is coming to an end. Something else is wanting to be born. We don't know what it is yet, but that should excite you. This is an opportunity to create something different, to create something with human and more than human flourishing at the center. And I'm not alone. There are imagination activists out there, lots of them starting to build. We've got Rob Hopkins, who time travels from the future, talks about the future that's already happened. We've got Alexa Clay, who's the Amish futurist, which I absolutely love. She dresses up and role plays an Amish person and goes to Silicon Valley tech conferences and asks really uncomfortable questions about why this technology is really necessary and can't we just go back to making buttermilk. I absolutely love her. She's fantastic. And then there's a place in the Netherlands where these activists wheeled 1,000 trees to different parts of the city to give people a real felt sense of what it would look like to green the city. I'm going to finish up because I can see that we're coming to an end. I want to leave you with one more image, one more metaphor, and if there's nothing else you take away from this talk, that's fine. So I'm going to invite you to use your imaginations to imagine that you are a goldfish. Imagine you're a goldfish right now. You're swimming around in your fish tank. Fish tank is lovely and warm. You've got a lovely bubble machine. Ooh, bubbles, amazing. You're distracted, you're happy. There's a lovely little fake castle. There's sparkly little rocks on the floor. And you're happy and it's great. But as you grow older, you start to realize that something is not quite right in the fish tank. Why is it that there's not enough fish food for all the little fish? Why is it that the sides of the fish tank aren't cleaned often enough? Why is there all this waste? and you go on a goldfish strike. You don't go to goldfish school anymore. You glue yourself to the side of the fish tank, and you have a little placard and it says, "There is no fish tank B," or "There is another fish tank is possible." I want you to think of this as where we currently are. The kinds of solutions, green capitalism, design thinking, sustainability, ESG, blah, blah, blah. This is just trying to make the fish tank a little bit more habitable. Where we need to go is to teach people and to yearn and to get to the vast and endless sea. Thank you very much.